28 transitions later. After stringing together a few levels with dark tunnels as transition spaces, we realized we could subvert player expectations by building another one that appeared to be a transition, but instead contained something else. Like everyone else, we saw 28 Days Later in 2002, loved it, and immediately wanted to create an escalating zombie encounter in one of our dark tunnels. It came together quickly, and we were pleased with the result. Years later, we met Alex Garland, the writer of the film. He had played and enjoyed Half-Life 2, and we confessed that his movie inspired this section.
Flashlight power. The decision to have both Sprint and the flashlight share the HEV's suit power was a controversial one in Half-Life 2. Initially, only Sprint used suit power, which made sense as it was meant to be only a short burst of speed. The flashlight, on the other hand, could be used indefinitely. But playtesting revealed an issue. Players often left dark areas without realizing their flashlight was still on. In brightly lit open areas like Coast, our performance budget couldn't support the flashlight being on continuously, so we needed a way to turn it off without player involvement. Limiting its power seemed like a simple solution, with the benefit of adding some tension to dark areas too. The challenge then became, what resource should it use? We already had suit power and didn't want to clutter the UI with a new resource just for the flashlight. We toyed with the idea of other player abilities using suit power, thinking it might be interesting to have players make trade-offs between them. This is a good example of game design often being about choosing between imperfect solutions. We didn't love the idea of Sprint and flashlight sharing a resource, but we also didn't want multiple resources cluttering the UI. In Episode 2, with no plans to add anything else that consumed suit power, we ultimately decided to give the flashlight its own separate resource.
Ramming zombies with the buggy. As human beings, we have expectations for our physical world, as mentioned a few times in this commentary. One of those expectations is, if you hit a zombie with your car, it should get absolutely booted into the air. But getting this effect in-game isn't as straightforward as it is in the real world. For performance reasons, enemies like the zombie use a simplified collision box during gameplay. This is a box that fits snugly around the zombie with no part of the model sticking out. But when the zombie dies, it's converted into a ragdoll with more accurate, per-limb collision boxes, though this is more expensive to simulate. This change in collision representation adds further complexity when you ram a zombie with the buggy, beyond just the frame hitch. When the buggy first collides with the zombie, it touches the zombie's simplified collision box. The game then kills the zombie, converting it into a ragdoll that the physics system begins to simulate. Now, with more accurate per-limb collision, the closest part of the zombie may be several inches away from the buggy. As a result, the next time the physics system simulates, the zombie starts falling from gravity because the buggy is no longer pushing it. While it's only a short moment before the buggy reaches the zombie again, this small discrepancy made ramming zombies unsatisfying. They often fell out of the player's view. To fix this, we saved the force the zombie's collision box received when hit by the buggy, and applied that same force to the ragdoll after conversion. We also added a slight upward force to the ragdoll, launching it a bit. With these tweaks, zombies reliably folded over the front of the buggy when hit, which better matched player expectations.
D2, Coast 9. Late in Coast development, we reached a point where our game code was far enough ahead of our level design that our gameplay programmers were looking for more code to write and new tasks that could help Half-Life 2 ship. This was largely due to the demands of coast levels, which placed a heavy burden on our level designers with their sheer scale and extensive terrain usage. As a result, our gameplay programmers began designing smaller scale encounters. Later, when our level designers caught up, they created this level by stitching together 3 separate encounters from the programmers and performing all the necessary finishing work to prepare it for release.
With the increased density of objects in Half-Life 2's gameplay spaces, we thought it would be interesting to have players search for a specific item, especially if there was some logic to where it might be found. This way, players could locate the item either through careful observation and deduction, or just by brute force searching the area. Since we already had models for cars and batteries, it was a natural step to create a small junkyard for players to explore. We also hid a couple of extra batteries in unexpected places for the players who chose the brute force method. As with other item-based puzzles, this one needed a failsafe in case players lost the batteries. You can try throwing all of them over the cliff if you want to see what happens.
Chatter. They're looking for your car. Get your car in the garage. Get your car in the garage. Get your car in the garage.
Buggy removal. Once we reached the point where we wanted the player to leave the buggy behind, we had to be very explicit about it. Throughout Coast, players had been leaving the buggy and then returning to it, so we found that playtesters would try to bring it along if it looked even remotely possible. This small garage scene primarily exists to signal clearly that the player is done with driving and will be proceeding on foot.
performance constraints. For the final Coast arena, we envisioned a big finale where the player and a squad of citizens would hold out against waves of combined soldiers, culminating in a gunship battle. Unfortunately, the computational cost of having soldiers and friendly allies moving around on terrain meant that the battle kept being scaled back to fit within our performance budget. By the time we were down to featuring only a single squad of soldiers at any given time, we were already late in development. Too late to make large-scale changes to the arena to accommodate more enemies, we had to redesign the flow of the fight to keep the number of soldiers to a minimum.
Dropship Deployment. Deploying soldiers from the dropships was tricky, as it required NPCs to spawn inside another solid object. To get them into the open where they could start navigating normally, they immediately play an animation that has them leaping out of the container the moment they spawn. Once that was working, we encountered another issue. Savvy players would simply just wait outside the container and shoot the soldiers during their exit animation. To counter this, we added a turret to the container to defend the soldiers as they exit. It doesn't fully prevent a player from taking advantage, especially if they're using an indirect weapon like a grenade or something, but that felt realistic and like a true-to-life countermeasure someone thinking strategically might take.
Lighthouse Gunship. The gunship scenario here took some work to play out the way we envisioned it. We wanted it to unfold as it would in a movie. In the filmic version, a gunship would fire through the windows as the protagonist ascended the lighthouse, anticipating their movements. To simulate that anticipation in the game, we set up a complex series of trigger volumes along the staircase. As they detect the player moving up, they instruct the gunship to choose a new flight path that matches the player's altitude. The triggers also enable bullseye targets in the windows nearest the player. These are invisible game objects that the enemy AI will immediately perceive as hostile, and prompts the gunship to fire at the windows. This blend of AI and scripting is central to Half-Life's combat scenarios. The AI manages the general, adaptive behavior of the NPCs, while the scripting customizes each scenario's unique requirements.
Here, have a med kit. This way, Dr. Freeman. We'll take the cliff path before another gunship finds us. All right, Dr. Freeman. Come with me before another one comes. All right, Dr. Freeman. Come with me before another one comes. Let's go! Let's go! Right along there. And watch your step. I'm hurt.
Buggy theft. As we built the end of Coast, we decided to have the Combine steal the player's buggy. It really doesn't make logical sense, but after watching so many playtests where players developed a strong attachment to their buggy, we wanted to play with that emotional connection. Once we implemented the theft, we had playtesters yelling at the Combine for stealing their ride, something we took as a sign of success. The soldier firing down from the cliff top is simply there to draw the player's eye up, triggering the look target and spawning the dropship with the buggy. Watching it now 20 years later, we're struck by how ridiculous it all is.
Finest mind of his generation. Here is another small interstitial scene that ended up working well. The only requirement for this moment was to teach the player to stay off the sand. With prior scenes, we were still focused on simply making them functional. But by the time we got to this one, we were becoming more comfortable and started enjoying the process of putting extra thought into these moments. In doing so, we pushed the characters beyond being mere signposts, creating something more interesting and entertaining. After release, Laszlo went on to develop a larger-than-life following, reminding us how hard it is to predict what players will hold on to.
Remember to stay off the sand. The ant lions are edgy right now.
Floor is lava. Building gameplay around broadly understood concepts like the floor is lava made training it easy. We liked how our physics system allowed for a high degree of creative freedom in how players chose to tackle it. Some build walkways out of many objects, while others focus on using just their 2 favorite sheets of metal. Some carefully follow the path up in the rocks, concerned about falling, while others move directly towards the exit, perch on objects just above the sand. Playstyles varied. Some players consider it a failure if they summon antlions, reloading immediately, while others enjoy scrambling back up on the rocks to recover. We also like that it functioned as a navigation puzzle, but could be turned into an arena if players preferred. Some just jump onto the sand and fought their way to the end.
Sandtrap Hunter. The explosive barrels are provided for players to use against antlions while standing safely within the Thumper's protection. But we're also using this as a hint for the upcoming antlion guard encounter, where players often use similar tactics to win the fight. Optional player actions, like launching explosives with a gravity gun, can be forgotten if they aren't used regularly. With the wide range of offensive options we give players, there's no guarantee they've used this ability recently. So here, we're subtly suggesting they bring it back into their toolkit before they face the guard.
Vortigaunt Extraction. This arena presented some tricky design problems for a couple reasons. First, the guard is a melee-only enemy, so we couldn't allow the player to reach areas where the guard couldn't follow. We did experiment with a few ranged attacks, but didn't like the results. Its goose-spitting attack, for instance, ended up looking ridiculous. The only non-melee attack that survived was its ability to bash physics objects at the player, but this required objects to be in range, which isn't always guaranteed. The second challenge was ensuring that no matter where the guard dies, the Vortigaunt can reach its corpse. This was essential as the game can't proceed if the Vortigaunt is unable to extract the bug bait.
In rare cases, players could find themselves unable to kill the antlion guard in this arena. This would happen if they ran out of ammo or had misused all of the available physics objects, leaving nothing to launch with the gravity gun. To address this, we added a citizen on the mounted turret above the gate as a failsafe, allowing a stuck player to rely on a citizen to kill the guard.
The Freemen will do wise to heed our extraction of the Myrmidon's aromatic pteropods. The process is not entirely hygienic, therefore stand aside. The Freemen will have need of these pteropods on the paths ahead. Gather them now. The Freeman must follow. The Freeman must excuse us. It is rude of us to commune by flux shifting in front of those whose portal inputs are impaired.
Get going! going, Dr. Freeman? Nova Prospekt just ahead. One man alone wouldn't stand much chance going in there. But a man with a pack of antlions, well, that's a different story.
The Freeman honors us by his presence. Follow Freeman.
Bugbait training. This clumsy bugbait training is where we landed, having run out of time, but needs to understand the tool for Nova Prospekt's design to work. Generally, we aim to add enough flavor and context to training so it doesn't feel like training. It feels like a natural part of discovering something new. Here, though, we didn't quite manage that. As obvious as it may seem, bugbait wasn't something players intuitively grasped. We're well into the game now, so players have plenty of experience dealing with enemies. Before we added any training, the first playtesters who collected bugbait entered the next level and instinctively shot the first antlion they saw, because that had been working up until then. Half-Life tends to encourage a shoot first, ask questions later approach. Similarly, when players reached Nova Prospekt, they didn't think to throw bugbait at the Combine soldiers and instead relied on their usual weapons. So, we needed this training not only to show how bugbait works, but also to demonstrate that antlions would be close to the player without attacking.
The Freeman will now be instructed in the use of theropods. Attend now and learn to shepherd antlions with the so-called bugbait. The Freeman will now break out his theropod and toss one into yonder pit. The Freeman has done well. The Freeman can also coax his antlions to attack specific targets. Observe the training mannequin and mark it well with another theropod. The Freeman again excels in all tasks. Apply pressure to your theropod to signal the antlions in your command to follow you. The Freeman shows his excellence in all things. And now this one must bid the Freeman farewell. Nova Prospekt lies just beyond. Remember well what you have learned here. The Eli Vance has greatest confidence in you.
Thumper Final Stage. We liked the final stage of Thumpers, where their purpose is inverted. Now, instead of serving as a tool for safety, they act as a blocker for the player's antlion army. However, we probably should have incorporated more thorough Thumper training before this point. While it was acceptable for players to only partially understand Thumpers in the earlier coast levels, the stakes are higher now because players are also trying out bugbait for the first time. Players who don't realize that this first Thumper prevents their antlions from moving forward may misunderstand how bugbait works. If they throw bugbait at soldiers in the first bunker and no antlions arrive, they might conclude that bugbait is unreliable, or doesn't work as expected, and switch back to using their weapons instead.
Priority warning. Perimeter restrictors disengaged. Full stabilization.
Assault on Nova Prospekt. With an infinitely responding antlion army on a coastline assaulting a fortified Combine base, it was hard not to try a Normandy-inspired level. Our initial prototype featured trenches leading up to Nova Prospekt, with lethal machine guns forcing the player and their antlions to stay within the trenches to survive. It was thrilling to have machine gun fire and leaping antlions constantly passing above the trenches. Unfortunately, we couldn't make it work within our performance budget, and ultimately had to set it aside in favor of a completely different layout. However, the mounted guns remained, as their lethality proved useful in encouraging players to rely on their antlions.
Alert. Contact status 0 with Land Z intercept team. Possible anti-citizen 1 reinfection. All Nova Prospekt stabilization delegates move to hard point. Nova Prospekt stabilization force Directive 2. Engage reserve.
Nova Prospekt Yard. The combat throughout the Nova Prospekt Yard was largely inspired by our early observations of antlions fighting Combine soldiers. The antlions' high mobility and melee attacks paired well with the soldiers' range lethality and vulnerability up close. Antlions look great under fire, with particle effects flying everywhere, and when they finally reach a soldier, the resulting ragdoll effect is incredibly satisfying.
Overwatch acknowledges critical oxygen breach. Airwatch augmentation force dispatch and inbound. Hold for reinforcement.
Contact confirmed.
Magic wall. Like many of our combat arenas, we needed a gate of some kind to prevent players from moving on before they finished this fight. Unfortunately, we were out of time and had to move on to the train station, so we ended up with this bit of magical bullshit. A wall that just explodes after the second gunship is defeated, revealing the way forward. We reassured ourselves that most players wouldn't notice, as they'd be busy fighting the gunships, and our playtesting had shown that generally they all finished the fight before they reached this point. With enough explosions throughout the arena, the destroyed, burning wall felt pretty natural, so we threw in a couple of simple gas puzzles on the other side to justify it. But no, we're not exactly proud of it.